A new report suggests that a big Democratic win in the fall could result in not just a second stimulus package, but multiple checks all the way into next year. Hey everybody, this is LA with a second stimulus check and stimulus package update for today. This is our second of three. Earlier today, we detailed a brand new second stimulus package bill introduced minutes ago. It's really exciting news. And this is almost, in a way, a first stimulus package because it goes back and amends the CARES Act before it gives you additional stimulus in the next couple of weeks. So watch that video. And coming up later today, we'll be answering your POA and UI questions with more details about POA and UI. But let's get right to the shocking details. We're going to cover three things in this stimulus package update, and they're all over the place. First, new analyst report suggests that if before I even say this, I want to fully disclaim, this channel has never been political and never will be political. The purpose of the information I'm about to disclose to you is basically how many checks you'll be getting and when you'll be getting them. Okay, so as you know, a few days ago we detailed what the president's administration is proposing with a second stimulus check. Now I have data about what a potential big Democratic win in the fall could do as to stimulus packages. There's news indication today from several analyst reports that if there's a big Democratic win in the Congress and a Biden win for presidency, you could see not only a second stimulus check, but multiple checks into next year. What are we talking about here? Well, originally, when the Democrats were working on the HEROES Act and when they were working on the CARES Act, they had called for multiple stimulus checks into 2021. They had called for 6 checks every single month until unemployment went down. 6 checks at minimum $2,000 per check. That sort of fell along the wayside as Republican popularity in the Congress grew. Well, there's new data today from Wall Street analysts speaking on the record with CNBC that suggests if there's a big Democratic win, you could see more stimulus checks than even proposed currently. There's a lot of stimulus checks. That's great news. There's slightly bad news with that as well. The way they're thinking those stimulus checks would be funded is not by the Federal Reserve, which the channel has detailed extensively. The Federal Reserve can print more money and then finance their money by issuing treasury bonds, which they did just a few weeks ago. Rather, there's now suggestion that a Biden presidency would raise taxes. And that is certainly what the Republicans are going to say, but the Democrats, on the other hand, are going to say, we're going to give you a lot more stimulus checks. This is really quite interesting because basically what CNBC did was they went and spoke with a lot of people like Jonathan Hartman, associate at Goldman Sachs, and now consultant of the World Bank. It spoke to Tim McConnell, if I'm pronouncing that right, Trump's campaign spokesperson. And it looked at what Wall Street is looking at with these stimulus packages. And it's now suggesting that Trump's people are saying, hey, we'll give you a stimulus package. We're not going to say how many, but if you vote for the Democrats, they may give you more stimulus packages, but they also may give you more taxes. Hartley and others said, hey, taxes across the board under a Biden possible presidency is likely. So you might get more stimulus checks under Biden, but you also might get higher taxes. The question is who might get the higher taxes. There's some disagreement on that, and there's really no clear word. Of course, I'm reporting the news. I'm not taking a political stance on either situation. The article goes on and on to basically say, hey, we think this is going to happen with this party and this is going to happen with the other party. But there's 2 other developments I want to go over with you today, which one is great and the other one is like, really? First, the Federal Reserve, who seems to always give us great news, especially when it comes to stimulus checks. If you did not hear our news on the Federal Reserve days ago, we said that the Federal Reserve has now indicated that they have only used 6% of their entire allotted funds, which they delegated for stimulus packages to deal with COVID-19 weeks ago. They have yet to only use 6% of it. So it's all still sitting there and they're ready to use it. It's like, well, come on, Jerome Powell, let's use it. The viewers of this channel are wondering, okay, you Federal Reserve, you have this money, start issuing the money and start using it. But it's really great news because there's all that money there. But today the Federal Reserve did another step to that. Today the Federal Reserve put new restrictions on U.S. banking industry, that annual stress that was concerned about the liquidity of local banks. What did they do? They issued a new release that big banks will be required to suspend share buybacks and cap dividend payments at the current level for the third quarter of the year. Why is that important? The Federal Reserve wants to maintain liquidity at local bank levels to make sure that those banks can operate for you. There's nothing worse than trying to receive a second stimulus check into your bank and your bank has gone insolvent, in the month of August. Federal Reserve is trying to protect you to ensure that you have a bank come the next couple of weeks. While I expect the banks will continue to manage their capital actions and liquidity risk prudently and in support of the real economy, there is a material uncertainty about the trajectory of the economic recovery, says Vice Chair Randall Quarles in a statement minutes ago. So it's really quite fascinating. Finally, the most shocking second stimulus update of the day. And I don't think this is the first time we've heard it, but it's certainly the craziest version that we've ever heard. If you didn't get your first stimulus check, well, guess who might have it? A dead person. Yes, a new report issued today by the Treasury and a watchdog group, not a watchdog person, but a watchdog group, says the federal government sent first stimulus checks amounting to $1.4 billion, with a B, to 1.1 million dead people. So somewhere out there, a dead person may have your check. Awful. The new report came out today in the Washington Post. It's from a watchdog group called the U.S. Government Accountability Office. They've been independently investigating the first stimulus checks over the last couple weeks. And they realized that of the $3 trillion that were delegated in the CARES Act, a lot of it is missing. If you don't recall, this channel has been detailing really what is going on with these allotments of stimulus checks. The CARES Act was $3 million. Actually, it's more like $2 trillion. The current proposal from the HEROES Act is at $3 trillion. The Mitch McConnell proposal is at $1 trillion. This is second stimulus packages, and the White House wants to drop it right in the middle at $2 trillion. Well, what's great about the current situation for the second stimulus checks is the following. The White House wants to give you $2 trillion of COVID-19 second stimulus package money. But of that money, more is going to the U.S. citizens than the CARES Act in March. Why? Because there's less programs in there for big businesses. The CARES Act was really used up a lot by big business money. When you looked at that $2 trillion of the CARES Act, which is exactly how much the White House wants to give you in a second stimulus package, a very large percentage of it was for big business, and a very small percentage went to small individuals. Well, boy, maybe even less individuals got money under the first stimulus package than ever thought before. It found that there was an enormous amount of people that got nothing because their checks landed in the hands of dead people. Now, where are those dead payments or payments to dead people? It's not quite clear in the report, but we're talking about an enormous amount of money. And this group says that the Treasury and the IRS rushed to disperse 160 million payments totaling $268.9 million after the CARES Act was passed and really butchered it. So what do we have? And where would that money go? And will that money come back? There's chatter, and boy, you see me tossing pages because the report just goes on and on and on. But there's indication that, hey, if that money went to dead people, that money is still around. So this is really good news. If the money wasn't used, if it was basically sent somewhere and went into basically a vortex of non-use, basically it was mailed to somewhere and was never deposited, it was never cashed, it was never used, you may have fortunes of money left over from the CARES Act that has still not been that has still not been allocated. This is great news because it can be put into a second stimulus package. So let's get to some of your 41 questions about yesterday's stimulus check update. Clancy, looking good, sounding great. You always have something to say that helps me in my attitude. Well, thank you. Our stimulus package updates generally follow three possibilities. First, we talk about the checks themselves. Second, we talk about lending and bank liquidity and things that are important to you, loans, grants, free money. And finally, we talk about PUA and UI in our third videos every day. Christina, EIDL question, I'll answer that later. Mod G, 10,000 subscribers. Congrats, LA, well deserved. I was one of your very first early subscribers. Happened second anniversary also. Yes, so if you're new to this channel, thank you for joining us. Today is our 2-month anniversary. In those 2 months, those mere 60 days, this channel has helped viewers get somewhere between $5 to $25 million in grant and loan money they were entitled to but had not gotten paid but for technicalities and solved by this channel. We've got to 10,000 subscribers and about 1.6 million views, so thank you for joining the family. Just a wonderfully nice group of people here. The Big D Zone, thank you for reading my comments on the evil Mitch. You should replace him. I would love to, but I'm not in Kentucky. Anyone want me to move there? I'm happy to do it. Grandma Ducky, we love your channel. Thank you so much. Danny Boy, just received a call from Patty Murray's office. I hope they can help SBA. Troy Boom. So will the Fed issue stimulus checks as well? Really great question. It's not quite clear what Jerome Powell wants to do. He has talked about stimulus, and what he's referring to, that viewer, is that in the last few days, we have detailed that the Fed has said on the record within the last 7 days, they have all this money sitting around. They have this money they allocated for stimulus a few months ago, and they have also other money. And they do not need congressional approval to issue stimulus checks. So that's really great news. I mean, you have 3 different places where stimulus can come from: the Congress, the states, and the Fed. And we know the states are gearing up by extending UI benefits additional weeks. The states, this is not the federal government, the states. So they're doing their version of stimulus. The Congress, of course, has a stimulus package up for vote in late July, early August. But then you have the Fed. So you have all these different bodies really trying to get you stimulus packages. And this channel details all of them for you. Robert Henson, so send out the checks. Yes, it's like, y'all have this money, start sending the money, stop waving the money in our faces. Buckle loose. Hey, LALATE, I have a question about PPP. I'll answer that later as well. Tim Wilson, I'm going to pause this video right now at 8 seconds and grab a vodka live. I hear bombshell. I'm taking a shot. Thank you so much. And if our viewer whose screen name is Late Night Drinker, well, just drink away with him. Robert Schaefer, if you're single and receive $2,000, if you're married and no children, you receive $3,000. If you're married with a children, you receive $4,000. I think Congress wants to give you even more money than that. I think the children, the proposals that ultimately will pass will be more money than that. Gamer, the only course of action acceptable is to issue at least $2,000 a month for at least the next 6 months. This channel agrees, exactly correct. It's really not enough to send $1,200 check. It's actually a joke. It's like a slap in the face. $2,000 checks for several months is really what's on the table. I think it's going to get passed. If you have a question about today's second stimulus check video, drop them in the comments below. Coming up today, our final second stimulus check video, one about PUA and UI, and also EIDL grant and EIDL loan. As always, thank you for joining us. Thank you for making this our great 60-day anniversary. I don't know what you call that, 2-month anniversary, 10,000 subscribers, and let's just keep on having fun. As always, stay with LA for more.